Hey everybody, it's me Rex the Dog. I want to make videos a bit like this more often that aren't just like the laundry vlogs where I kind of talk about what's going on with the week or whatever, or the live streams where I play video games. I want to kind of make more of these videos where I sit down with the camera and I talk about things that have been on my mind recently, whether they are, you know, like movies, TV shows, or video games, or just whatever, just things I've been thinking, because there are things in my head all the time, and I don't think I'm capitalizing on sort of, at least even just for my own sake, sort of talking about them and exploring them and discussing them out loud. And then, you know, at the same time, I can share them with you guys, and you guys can share your opinions and contribute right back at me. Now, you guys might know I really enjoy movies. I like watching movies a lot. Even movies that are, you know, are bad, mediocre, whatever. I just find it really, it's the same way with video games or music or whatever. I find it interesting to just see different ideas, how these ideas are executed, and also kind of think about how, you know, those ideas could play out in different ways, or things like that. And you know, when it comes to feature films, the place where you see a lot of like original ideas, you know, executed well or poorly or whatever in between. I don't really want to sort of give qualitative judgments or assessments here, but I kind of think I'm going to. Is within the horror genre. You know, the horror genre is somewhere where the actual kind of like the design brief of the genre sort of demands it, and also the method of production as well, of these things being something that are usually incredibly low budget, with a lot of incredibly, I say, but low budget, you know, have restrictions attached to them, have a, you know, are looking for like a shock, a twist, a gimmick to kind of get butts and seats. And as a consequence, those limitations do often, you know, bring out really, really sort of like creative ideas and stuff like that. The first Smile movie I didn't really enjoy. I didn't feel like Smile was very good. I thought it was kind of okay. But that's not really going to stop me from seeing Smile 2 now, is it? So let's kind of talk about Smile 2. And if you don't want spoilers for Smile 2, then bail on this video. It's time to go away. It's time to scram. But if you want to hear about kind of my thoughts on Smile 2, and specifically one thing that happens in Smile 2, then stick around. Because, here we go, spoilers. Smile 2 has a ending that is insanely ambitious. You get the movie of Smile 2, which is, you know, unfortunately didn't really have a lot of characters who I cared about. The third act was incredibly incoherent, to be honest, but which kind of annoys me, because if there was a few characters I cared about, it had a tighter third act that kind of made sense. It would have made what happens, this tag that happens at the end, even kind of more dramatic and shocking to me, and given it more weight, right? It really made me wish that like this tag at the end was so cool, and so interesting and so shocking and captivated my mind so much. It made me wish that the what came before it, this like sort of just complete movie that came before it, was way better, because this ending really stuck out to me. Maybe really stuck out to me, because the movie is tagged by incredibly shocking events. It basically implies that there is going to be the imminent off-screen violent suicide of several thousand people, and the majority of these being teen girls. It was incredibly shocking. Came out, it's like, whoa, that is like an apocalyptic event. This is like, what is happening right now? And when I'm kind of thinking about, you know, structure of movies, I'm quite often sort of in this mindset where I'm thinking about the, you know, 10 minutes before, 10 minutes after, right? What happened in 10 minutes before? What happened in the 10 minutes after? So this sort of type of apocalyptic nightmare scenario rarely fully breaks out in horror videos. I'm getting ahead of myself because I want to talk about a video, but this is sometimes when my mind's going faster than these sort of like crazy apocalyptic scenarios never really play out that much in horror movies, kind of like for a bunch of reasons, right? When you start thinking about like you have to start making a completely different movie, you have to think about sort of the budget and whatever. You think about The Ring, for existence. I kind of want to talk about The Ring for a bit because I have kind of like a bit of experience with The Ring, to be honest, because I've watched like, you know, the American version. I've actually, you know, I've watched the Japanese version. I've actually read the book, right? In the book, The Ring, Sadako manifests not as like this girl crawling out of TV, but as like this sapient strain of smallpox that's culling the people who don't share the videotape as a way of sort of punishing the public's mistreatment of her mother. It's like, I mean, so in that she has like male and female like sex organs in the book, but like she identifies as female. I haven't read the book sequels yet, but like the implication is that Sadako becomes like inescapable and holds the world under her power in like this sort of like apocalyptic like epidemic, right? Which is kind of wild. Now I understand that like why they don't sort of adapt that of it being sort of a into the movies, whether it's whether it's Ringu, whether it's the Japanese one or whether it's the American one. And I think the American one's good, man. Because of like, you know, like her coming out the TV and stuff, it's just like this way more like visual thing than the disease, which I think really works well in the literature. But you know, since that threat is sort of just like microbial in the novel, but yeah, this idea of like kind of this like apocalyptic, like, you know, that like her dominating the earth with sort of like this virus is like, it's like wild and shocking, you know, like those sort of like nightmare scenarios never really break out in horror movies. Like the Ring video, for instance, was like, you know, think of the video in the movies, for example, it was never broadcast on national TV, which would have been wild. Like, imagine if they did that. Do you know what I mean? Like, I know these like horror movies are like they can be really effective and scary when they're personal, but then the idea of like actually sort of like breaking them out and going like, you know, whether that's in sequels or whatever, of going like, oh, like, dude, now it's like everywhere. Like the Ring videotape gets broadcast on national TV. It's crazy. You know what I mean? Again, talking about like cool sort of like original ideas of like that you'll find in horror and stuff like that. It Follows, man. Like someone who was being like It Followed never went to like an orgy. You know what I mean? That said, there are great examples of moments in movies where the heretofore contained premise suddenly and logically explodes. You know, like for example, the rampage at the police station in Terminator. It's like so iconic, and it explodes that premise of just like, oh hey, like no, it was like targeting like, you know, this individual, but now it's been on like this force has been unleashed on like a wider set of people, of the public. You know, so it does happen, and you know that is something that happens of just like, whoa, you know, we were on this line of just like, you know, tracking this one person, and now we're in a police station and these people are all collateral damage as well. So it does happen in these like, you know, as I'm saying, like these satisfying like explosions which are logical and kind of follow what we're doing with the story. And like those moments are like that are really iconic. The Terminator one, like especially, it's been like verbatim repeated multiple times. Most recently in Malignant, they just like did, you know, if you watch that movie, you'll see a bit and you'll just be like, okay, yeah, this is the Terminator scene, right? And I'm sure you can sort of like think of examples on your own, but they're probably dwarfed, you know, like on scale and scope by the Curse Super Spreader event at the end of Smile 2. It's literally like on scale 3 9/11s worth of implied gruesome child suicides. It's actually mind-boggling to comprehend, like, of okay, this the smile, sort of like force has spread out to that scale. If you haven't seen these movies, then maybe you don't kind of have a perspective of what I'm talking about. But it's like what I was saying there, like it's equivalent to like broadcasting the Ring tape. Like, you think of that, and that's insane, right? The amount, it's really hard to comprehend. Much less to try to imagine it playing out, and yet that is what the movie fully intends you to imagine will happen next, right? Because it rolls credits, right? Honestly, as I was going back to it, like, I think of events like this, and I think like 10 minutes before, 10 minutes after. Unfortunately, the 10 minutes before are like a mess because the third act's so like jank, and the 10 minutes after don't happen because it hits credits. Like, I honestly wish it had gone for 10 more minutes. It, like, the Smile monster kills 5,000 children supercut would have locked the movie into like cinema history forever, even with, as I'm saying, like the characters being sort of whatever, and the third act especially being incoherent. Now the Smile movies are doing well. Like, people are showing up to them, whatever. We've had 2 of them in 2 years or whatever. There will be a Smile 3, but instead I suspect that they will somehow try to escape this if there's a Smile 3. I remember this was like the Resident Evil movies. Like, I mean, this is a schlock, right? But those one of them were ended with like, Mila and everybody else or whatever. They were at like the White House, and it was like the apocalypse, and it was surrounded by demons and stuff. And in the next movie, like, they just like back out of that, And there's another one where the movie ended with her like 5,000 clones of her, and in the next movie they just like back out of that. They will back out of this in the next movie. I assume that Smile 3 will be a prequel. I assume they'll just go back. They'll do a prequel before the first movie. Maybe they'll do a period piece when it's in the 90s, or I don't know. But I don't think they're gonna like follow up on this, which I want to see, because it's just crazy ambitious. Not because like I want to see like scales of murder that size. You can see of like the way I sort of like talked about it, of like trying to like comprehend the scale of that. Like, I take these seriously. When I watch these like movies and these like. It's why something like like the Zack Snyder superhero movies or the Michael Bay Transformers movies are so shocking, because you're thinking about like the level of like, or at least I am, like, every scene you're seeing like skyscrapers, like 9/11 scale sort of things happening, and people like they're like, the scale of this is like, how am I supposed to comprehend the amount of like insane amount of death here, and this movie demands you to do that, but of 10,000 children or whatever it is. It's absolutely crazy, right? It's absolutely crazy, and to see that sort of like explored, instead of just kind of going down the general sort of like sequel, or prequel sort of hollow echoes of the original that don't expand the universe sort of meaningfully. Would just be, I would be interested to see it. I'd rather it happened in this movie. I'd rather there's 10 minutes more of this movie. But if Smile 3 can like actually sort of explore that premise, it would be crazy. I don't think it will. I think it'll be a prequel. I would love it if it sort of did, and Smile 3 just like went full Mouth of Madness, or I don't know, man. There's just like I think the fact of like not giving us that extra 10 minutes was a failure. because I thought that ending was just like fantastic, but I can't understand the decision to kill off, Kyle Gallner, who's the only character who continued from the first film. He could have like functionally explained the rules of the demon rather than like, I guess he was a fake person, whoever that guy was in the bar. Like, I don't know, man. The decision to not lean into the mythology and the off the rails, what even happened third act was so incredibly short-sighted, and just like ridiculous and poor. However, as far as incredibly short-sighted as that was, there was really cool ideas in it, like the idea to make the protagonist of a horror movie a global pop star was just like absolutely brilliant, So it's what you get with these horror movies, which is why even if like good or bad, mediocre, kind of boring, wherever they kind of lie, there's always some sort of like level of interest for me, because you get those kind of like what if scenarios you can think about. You get those, whoa, that is like, the main character here is like, Billie Eilish or Taylor Swift, or do you know what I mean? Like that's just like really cool and inspired. You get those cool moments to think about. You get the good, you get the bad, whatever. It's just exciting. I think if you like stories, you like ideas, you like premises, you like whatever, like creativity, I think just like that's one of the things that really sort of attracts people to horror, and especially because the genre itself is like, it taps into such a like an emotive fear as well, that kind of like adds into everything. But yeah, I don't know, man. It's like nearly every successful sequel takes the original and adds something. It doesn't just like hit repeat, People will fight that out of fear, and almost always franchises will attempt in some way to revert back to the status quo. Like The Simpsons just revert everything back at the end of every episode. It's just disappointing, but for those reasons, I think Smile 3 probably won't start with a world that knows the supernatural is real, thanks to the largest tide of suicides and insanity in recorded history. I think it'll be a prequel. But, oh man, what if it did?